$1.83 trillion kWh. China's clean energy numbers just surpassed the US's expectations. Samagina, nation once branded the world's coal factory, now becoming the stage where sun and wind are toppling the very symbol of hydropower dominance. In May 2025, China announced a seismic milestone in global energy for the first time in history. Solar and wind power surpassed hydropower in total electricity generation, outstripping even the Three Gorges Dam, once the world's unrivaled energy icon. Powered by thousands of kilometers of solar panels stretching across Inner Mongolia, by wind turbines standing firm in the Gobi Desert, and driven by the ambition of a nation rewriting the rules of climate power, no loud proclamations, no COP resolutions. Just raw technological might and a plan that seems almost unstoppable. And you should know, this isn't just an environmental story. It's a race to control the global clean energy map where China appears a decade ahead. Join Top 10 Discoveries official to uncover why this silent transformation is leaving Western energy hubs speechless, and why the world may be entering an era of energy geopolitics, where those who control clean infrastructure hold true power. By late 2024, China quietly achieved an energy milestone few nations could dream of. Its total renewable energy capacity officially hit 1.89 terawatt, far surpassing the entire electricity capacity of the United States, which stands at roughly 1.3 terawatts. According to data from China's National Energy Administration (NEA), within this renewable capacity, solar power contributed 887 gigawatts, GW, wind power 521 gigawatts, and hydropower 436 gigawatts. Though hydropower was historically China's energy backbone, epitomized by giants like the Three Gorges Dam by 2024, the light from solar panels and the gusts from high plateaus had taken center stage. Even more striking, in Q1 2025 alone, China accelerated at breakneck speed, adding nearly 60 gigawatts of solar capacity, 14.62 gigawatts of wind, and 2.13 gigawatts of hydropower. This pushed total renewable capacity to nearly 1.92 terawatts, an unprecedented leap in global renewable energy history. Specifically, by March 2025, China's solar capacity neared 947 gigawatts. Wind reached about 536 gigawatts, and hydropower stood at 438 GW. Together, solar and wind accounted for 1.483 terawatts, dwarfing hydropower in both installed scale and system influence. This marks the first time in modern history that two variable, nature-dependent energy sources, long deemed unstable and hard to control, have dominated the power infrastructure of the world's second-largest economy. If hydropower was the 20th century icon with colossal dams showcasing state power, this shift signals China's entry into a new era, where distributed energy becomes the backbone of sustainable development. In doing so, China is redefining what it means to be an energy superpower, no longer about who has the biggest plants, but who has the greener, more flexible grid. In many countries, renewable energy remains a paper promise touted as a political symbol, but contributing little to national grids. China is different. It doesn't just install hundreds of gigawatts annually, it generates and deploys electricity at industrial scale, reshaping the entire structure of energy consumption. In 2024, China hit a global shaking milestone. Solar and wind generated 1.83 trillion kilowatts kWh, surpassing the total residential electricity consumption of China's population, which was 1.49 trillion kWh. In other words, these two green sources alone could power every Chinese household for a year, if considered in isolation. That same year, hydropower, China's traditional energy pillar, produced roughly 1.3 trillion kWh. Based on historical data and market reports, thus, solar and wind didn't just catch up, they officially outproduced hydropower, a feat unseen in China's modern history. Overall, China's renewable sources in 2020, solar, wind, hydropower, and biomass generated about 3.46 trillion kWh, accounting for nearly 35% of the nation's total electricity output. It's estimated at approximately 9.89 trillion kWh. This is the highest share ever recorded for a major economy. Notably, non-hydropower renewables, solar, wind, and biomass contributed around 2.16 trillion kWh, or over 21% of national electricity for the first time. These sources crossed the 20% threshold of benchmark, signaling a transition to a post-fossil fuel grid. Strategically, this isn't just a technical triumph. It proves China isn't merely catching up to the West in green tech, it's leading in large-scale deployment. It's from installation to actual generation. When solar and wind outproduce hydropower, the nation's top technical symbol for 50 years, it's clear the energy order is shifting, and not just in China, this precedent will pile. Geopolitical pressure on G7 nations. Still wavering between technology, costs, and climate commitments. From now on, no one can cite grid integration challenges or insufficient output as excuses to delay renewables because China has done it to the world's largest scale. When it comes to renewables, most countries tinker with pilot wind farms or small solar arrays. In China, scale is redefined. It's no longer about megawatts but gigawatts, even hundreds of gigawatts, deployed in the planet's harshest terrains. The three projects below, if judged by scope, cost, and impact, aren't just national megaprojects. They're superstructures reshaping the global energy order. 1. **** Great Solar Wall. A 2,000 kilometers solar fortress **** in the Kabuki Desert, once a dead sea of sand in Inner Mongolia, China, is erecting a great solar wall spanning over 400 kilometers. It's potentially stretching to Xinjiang's Taklamakan desert goal. By 2030, 100 gigawatts of solar capacity, larger than Australia's entire current electricity generation. But what's most impressive isn't the numbers. It's how China integrates energy with ecological restoration. Rather than just planting panels in barren landscapes, the project fuses energy plus agriculture. Solar panels not only generate power, but also slow winds, provide shade, and retain soil moisture, reviving wild grasses, grazing, and even farming in the desert. A prime example is the Jinma Solar Power Station, 2 gigawatts capacity, producing 2 billion kilowatt-hours annually, enough for 300,000 to 400,000 people. This entire area was wasteland less than a decade ago, per NASA's Earth's Observatory. China adds nearly 40 gigawatts of solar annually, over 50% of global capacity. At this pace, the solar wall alone could power all of Beijing by 2030, about 48 billion kilowatt-hours a year. This isn't a solar farm. It's an energy and ecological fortress, visible from Space 2, **** Wind Corridor, a wind highway from Gansu to Sichuan. **** Western China, where winds exceed 7.5 meters per second in empty land stretches. Hundreds of kilometers is home to the colossal wind corridor the world rarely hears about. Its epicenter is the Gansu Juquin Wind Power Base, one of the world's largest wind farms, built in Gansu's flat, arid, near an inhabited terrain. This project currently boasts 10.45 gigawatts and aims for 20 GW, equivalent to 20 nuclear reactors running simultaneously. The project once struggled with transmission bottlenecks at one point. Nearly 40% of output was wasted due to lack of demand. But now, the 2,383 kilometers Juquin-Hunan HVDC line has solved this, delivering power from the northwest border to southeast industrial hubs. In Sichuan, rugged mountains limit scale compared to Gansu, but projects like Decheng, 109.5 megawatts, and Guangwan, Wangkang planned 400 megawatts shine, though not a unified corridor. Sichuan-Gansu forms a strategic wind axis, reducing China's reliance on eastern cold. With a 50 gigawatts goal across the northwest, this isn't a pilot. It's an interprovincial power artery. It's longer than Texas 3. **** UHV grid. China's superconducting backbone generating vast electricity means nothing if you can't transmit it thousands of kilometers with minimal loss. China solved this with something no other nation has: an ultra-high voltage UHV, a grid capable of transmitting power over 3,000 kilometers with under 5% loss by 2025. China operates over 30 UHV lines, including AC 1,000 kilovolts and DC plus or minus 800 kilovolts, plus or minus 1,100 kilovolts. Key routes include Juquan Hunan, 2,383 kilometers, 8 gigawatts capacity; Zhun Dong Dash, South Anhui, 3,293 kilometers. 12 gigawatts, world's longest JNSU-Zhejiang, started 2024. $5 billion investment, according to SCMP. China holds 80% of global patents in ultra-high VOLTAGE-UHV transmission, a critical advantage that enables it to share advanced grid technology with countries across Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East. What's unique? Only UHV can handle this scale. As traditional AC grids and G7 nations can't stably transmit high power over thousands of kilometers, these three structures, its solar wall, wind corridor, and UHV grid, not just proof of China's scale, but an integrated axis of clean energy. Geopolitics and technology. If the US sees solar panels as commercial products, China is turning production, transmission, ecological, restoration, and logistics into a power ecosystem. That's why Washington isn't just eyeing gigawatts, but the national strategy behind every power pole. For years, China's image in Western media was tied to phrases like global coal factory, Beijing's polluted skies, or world's top carbon emitter. But in the 2020s, an irony unfolded. China, the nation once vilified as the biggest polluters, becoming the supplier of infrastructure for a cleaner world. Instead of expanding coal plants, China executed a stunning pivot, investing trillions of yuan in renewables and global supply chains. The results? China produces over 80% of global solar photovoltaic PV panels, per the International Energy Agency, IEA, to firms. Luoyang and Tongwei alone hold nearly 40% of world market share. It controls over 60% of the global lithium battery supply chain. From mining to refining to production, it exported over 50% of new wind turbines. In 2020, for surpassing Denmark and Germany combined, it leads globally in producing inverters, converters, smart transformers, and storage devices for microgrids fields. The US and Europe dominated a decade ago, beyond building domestic capacity. China is exporting clean energy infrastructure as a strategic asset, emerging as a new pillar. Alongside traditional forms of influence like finance and telecommunications, in 2024, China funded and built dozens of large-scale solar projects in countries like Egypt, Benbun Solar Park, 1.8 gigawatts, using nearly 80% Chinese equipment. Brazil, multiple renewable farms in Bahia and Minas. Gerais using Huawei inverters and CATL storage. Saudi Arabia, Al Shuaibah, 2 solar 2.6 gigawatts. Built by a CWA Power with Chinese contractors. Kenya, Ethiopia, South Africa, microgrids from Huawei, Sungrow, and Jinka Solar, serving millions without prior electricity access. This shows China shifting from a defensive stance once criticized as a global polluter to leading the world in clean energy infrastructure, not through diplomatic speeches, but via containers of equipment, EPC contracts, and shipping lanes brimming with solar panels. At the 2025 World Economic Forum, the term green geopolitics emerged to describe a rising trend. Whoever controls the clean energy supply chain wields strategic influence, akin to oil superpowers of yesteryear. And no one dominates this trend like China. It hosts 9 of the top 10 global energy battery manufacturers made in China. Products feature in over 70% of global clean energy projects under construction in 2024. China overtook Germany as the largest funder of renewables in developing nations. Per Bloomberg, NEF, rather than relying on traditional influence mechanisms. China is shaping global energy development through clean technology by deploying solar panels instead of projecting military presence. China is no longer the emissions villain the world shunned. Instead, it's becoming the architect of a global clean energy ecosystem, where cities from Riyadh to Rio de Janeiro run on Chinese-designed, built, and installed technology. If the 20th century was the era of oil geopolitics, the 21st century is ushering in silicon geopolitics, where power lies with those who control sunlight, wind, and energy storage. And based on current data, China is stepping beyond its former developing nation label, redefining global influence through leadership in clean energy deployment. As China surges ahead in the renewable energy race, the question is, who's being left behind, and with what consequences? Nominally, the US remains the world's second largest renewable energy producer, but the gap with China is increasingly insurmountable. Solar. By late 2024, the US had about 180 gigawatts installed, while China exceeded 610 gigawatts, over 3 times more. By 2025, China may hit 947 gigawatts in solar alone. Wind, China outpaces the US here too, with 536 gigawatts by Q1 2025, compared to the US's approximately 145 gigawatts. Transmission. A bigger hurdle lies in infrastructure. China operates over 30 UHV lines, enabling power transmission over 3,000 kilometers with under 5% loss. The US, meanwhile, hasn't built a single UHV line, hampered by federal regulations, land ownership disputes, and state-level fragmentation. China doesn't just produce more clean energy, it transmits and distributes it more efficiently, something the US grid can't yet match. With superior production and strong government backing, China is restructuring the global renewable energy supply chain from costs to technology. Chinese solar panels now cost under 15 cents W, the lowest ever, making Western producers uncompetitive. Chinese wind turbines dropped over 20% in price from 2022 to 2024. Thanks to massive scale and deep component localization, storage batteries LFP, NMC from CATL, BYD, and EV are setting new price benchmarks, forcing US and European firms to rethink domestic production strategies. As a result, US energy giants like First Solar, GE Renewable Energy, and NextEra Energy are on the defensive. They're not just competing on price, but racing in a game where rivals already own the technology, supply chain, and global market share. A lesser discussed consequence: the US risks falling behind not only in cost competitiveness, but also in shaping the global standards for emerging energy technologies. For example, high-voltage inverter standards, led by Huawei and Sungrow, are becoming defaults in African and Middle Eastern projects, AI integrated all in one. Microgrids from Chinese firms are being tested in over 30 developing nations without US company involvement. This means, if the US doesn't adapt, it risks being sidelined not just in capacity, but in the global standardization of energy systems in the 21st century renewable energy race. China isn't just the fastest runner, it's resetting the starting line for the world. The US still has a chance, but every month that passes is a step further behind, not just in power, but in strategic, technological, and global influence. In a world racing to decarbonize, many nations are stuck between promises and execution. But China, once labeled the world's coal factory, is carving out a new role, not just a clean energy superpower, but a carbon positive. Titan.China has set ambitious 2030 targets. But what's striking is that most are already unfolding on the ground, not just on paper. Total clean energy capacity exceeding 2,100 gigawatts, 2.1 terawatts, double the US's current entire power system, grid scale. Energy storage reaching 300 gigawatt hours, enough to store power for tens of millions of households for hours. balancing variable wind and solar supply. Coal's share of electricity is dropping below 40%, a turning point for an economy that relied on coal for over 70%. Just a decade ago, these figures aren't just impressive, they paint a future where China isn't a high emitter, but could become a carbon credit exporter while the West, like the US or EU, continues buying credits to offset emissions. In reality, the world isn't just witnessing a race between batteries, turbines, or grids. What's unfolding is a quieter but profounder battle. Who defines the energy future? Who writes the new rules? For the first time in history, the leader isn't the US or Europe, but an Eastern nation. China isn't just building the most solar, it's exporting the clean energy development model. From substations in Egypt, solar farms in Kenya, to storage and microgrids in Saudi Arabia and South America, this is a geopolitical power shift not through aircraft carriers, but through every watt of sun. It's an Indian-generated power. Suppose you're an American consumer, would you use made in China clean energy? It's 40% cheaper and deploys twice as fast? If you're a policymaker in Washington, what do you do when your rival is building a global, clean energy ecosystem? From equipment and technology to pricing and standards, this isn't just a China story, it's the world's future. And if not taken seriously, the West risks losing control of something once its symbol of strength, electricity. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to catch more in-depth geopolitical analyses, world-changing tech discoveries, and the big questions shaping our future. Top 10 Discoveries Official will return with more astonishing breakthroughs, epic projects, and untold stories from across the globe. Goodbye, and see you soon.